Well, now South Korea's acting president has appointed 2 justices to the Constitutional Court in an attempt that avoid further conflict. At a cabinet meeting, the acting president emphasized the need for mediation and compromise. The country has been plunged into a huge political crisis since President Yoon Suk Yeol was impeached after imposing martial law earlier this month. But the acting president stressed the appointment of the justices was out of desperation to end political uncertainty and social conflict in order to prevent an economic crisis. Remember, an arrest warrant has also been issued to arrest the former president for imposing martial law. Listen in to the current acting president on what he had to say.
다만 여야 합의를 통해 헌법재판관을 임명해온 헌정사의 관행을 강조한 전임 권한대행의 원칙을 존중하고 그간 진행되어온 여야 간 임명 논의 과정을 고려하여 여야 간 합의에 접근한 것으로 확인된 정계선, 조한창 후보에 대해서는 오늘 즉시 임명하되 나머지 한 분은 여야의 합의가 확인되는 대로 임명하겠습니다.
What do you think? When will the arrest of former president might happen?
Well, we're in this very weird sort of limbo period where authorities have been given permission by the court to forcibly detain President Yoon. But honestly, we don't know when that will happen. This morning, investigative authorities said they intend to carry out that arrest warrant by the end of its deadline, which is next Monday. However, there's a question about just how they would do it and how much of a fight President Yoon's security detail will push back on. So essentially, until now, the Presidential Security Service, which Yoon is still entitled to even as an impeached president, has not allowed investigative authorities to carry out court-approved search warrants on presidential sites. They're still indicating that would be the case even though there is a detention or arrest warrant. However, investigative authorities are really warning at this point, if Yoon's security service does prevent this court-approved arrest attempt, then they themselves will be violating the law. It's leading to a lot of uncertainty and honestly, even some fears about small-scale clashes, perhaps among security forces, although it's not clear how serious that would be, even if it happened at this point.
But how do you see the acting president's attempt to stabilize the country?
Yeah, so what he did yesterday was essentially a compromise move. The opposition has demanded that the acting president approve 3 new constitutional court judges. And what he did yesterday was approve 2 of them and said he'll wait on the 3rd until both sides can sort of agree. Now, what that means is, for people who haven't been following this really closely, basically adding any judges to the court at this point increases the odds that Yoon will be removed from office by the Constitutional Court. There are usually 9 judges on that court. Right now, there are only 6. Yesterday, the acting president appointed 2 more. That means that there can be essentially 2 defections, 2 people who side with Yoon, and he still would have to go. So essentially, this was meeting, in the middle compared to what both sides are calling for right now in the South Korean political system.
Right. Bill, how was the impeachment, how has the impeachment of actually Yoon Suk Yeol impacted South Korean politics?
Yeah, it's a giant mess. Every week it seems like there's a new constitutional crisis. And that sort of phrase is often overused, I think, even in democratic contexts like this. But it's really a legitimate use of the word. We're in really unprecedented territory here. We're on the 3rd president in a month. There's lots of people in acting positions. The rules aren't clearly laid out for who has the authority to do what. There's lots of legal challenges. There's lots of politics at play. However, it does seem that I think most people assume that Yoon will be removed from office at the end of this. It still could last many days. I mean, the Constitutional Court has 180 days to rule on Yoon's impeachment. But at the end of it, there is sort of a growing expectation, I would even say, that Yoon will be removed eventually.
So reading the current scenario, how do you see the role of acting president in shaping South Korean future? Or who might come forward and take the role of the president?
Yeah, it's so tricky right now. I mean, in some ways, you've got to really feel for this acting president. This is a guy who didn't run for president. I think it was probably nowhere near his radar. And now he's not only taking the role of acting president, but many other senior positions who have been impeached since we saw these sort of successive impeachments. He's really controlling quite a bit here, and the country faces lots of crises, including that plane crash that everyone is talking about. This is really an ongoing investigation and a very sensitive situation. And there's also other, big political problems that are at play here. There's been a nurses and doctors strike for a long time, which is, in some ways paralyzed parts of the South Korean medical system. There's just a lot of things going on that an acting government is not really completely well suited to deal with. So it's really worth keeping an eye on many different aspects of South Korean politics and economic things going forward.